The highest number on the board is Clemson with 10.5 wins. We've talked a good bit about Clemson this offseason. Kind of did a state of the program pod on them, so I don't know that we have to go into a lot of detail, but
Right.
what are your thoughts on this Clemson team this year? I know we've heard some of Troy's thoughts, the Clemson fan we've brought on the pod a few times. What are your
Yeah.
thoughts?
Yeah. Quarterback play, right? I think it begins and ends with quarterback play really for them and the level of quarterback play that they get. Is there a quarterback controversy competition? Maybe. Yeah. Who knows? It's probably DJ week one, right? I mean, that's kind
Yeah.
of the consensus. And where does Cade Klubnik fit in there? We don't know yet, but we assume he's going to get some playing time, whether
Yep.
it's meaningful snaps or not. He's going to get an opportunity to show himself. But it's DJ's job to lose.
Mm-hmm.
And I really do feel like, so 10.5 is the number there for Clemson, right? So they're, to take the under, you would have to go with 2 regular season losses. They go to Notre Dame, right, in November, right? Tough. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
tough. That's a tough matchup, I think. They lost there 2 years ago when they went on the road. And that was when DJ showed out, by the way. That was like his one good game that he had. And okay, so I have the under on Clemson.
Okay.
I'm just going to preface everything. I have them winning their division. I have them winning their conference, but I do have them going under. I have them going 10-2. And for me, that's still a good year. That's still a good year for Clemson. I think they're going to lose to Notre Dame, and I think they're going to lose on the road to Wake Forest, a team that I'm high on. I think is going to put up a bunch of points this year. But like that is not a disappointment. Like I'm sitting here having to justify it, but I mean they went 9-3 last year, right? And they could have earned the regular season, could have lost more games, didn't win their division, didn't go to the conference championship. Life could have been worse. It could have been worse. They snuck out a win against Louisville. So this was last year, right? And like this year, I think it's going to be more comfortable. I do think a lot of things improve. There's a lot of turnover, right? With Venables leaving, with Elliott leaving, they're now head coaches. There's turnover, understood. I think they still rebound. I think they're better. I think they make an improvement. I don't think they're playoff caliber, though. I don't think they're a playoff team. I think they lose multiple games. But I do have them winning this division. Am I way off on that? Like, where are you at?
No, like I feel like there's almost two schools of thought on this. One is, Clemson is going to be right back. Last year was just a hiccup. Right back. Then the other school of thought is, oh, this is like a sign of just horrible things to come. Like Clemson is about to fall off a giant cliff.
Right.
And as is so often the case, I kind of feel like the truth is somewhere in the middle. Probably a little closer to the first one. Like,
yeah,
at least when it comes to the ACC.
Right.
I don't think it's a huge spoiler to say, yeah, I'm also picking Clemson to pick this to win this division and probably the ACC. Like, we'll get to that in several months because we're a little ways away. But to me, Clemson is still the class of the ACC, even though they lost it last year.
That's right where I'm at, like somewhere in the middle. I don't think they just get to, rinse and repeat and suddenly they're right back into the playoff conversation. That it might have to build back up into that.
Yeah.
And again, it's so tricky too, because like we don't know what DJ we're getting. Like, do we get do we get the Notre Dame DJ from 2 years ago where he threw for, was it 5 touchdowns and 400 and something yards? And like they lost the game, but he was incredible, right? Like he was unbelievable in that game. Or do we get it from last year where it was sloppy, it was poor reads, it was bad footwork, it was just inaccurate, everything was inaccurate. Like that matters a lot. So like I think he'll improve. I do think he'll improve. I think he'll get better. But they've lost a lot of playmakers, man, on defense. Like they've lost a lot. And so that's why I'm not just saying, okay, they're going over. They're going to win 11 or 12 games. They might go undefeated. That's why I'm refraining from going there yet, just because I want to see how the new staff gels.
Mm-hmm.
I want them to prove that to me. We deserve that as fans. We need to see it. We need to see what they are under this group of guys and this group of coaches, really. So the number's 10.5. I'm going under. Did you say where you were
Not
going?
yet.
Still working on it. Okay.
Yeah. So I will say, like, we have talked a lot about DJ and Cade Klubnik, the true freshman,
Sure.
coming in, and
Right.
for rightly so though, like, because last year they didn't really have another option. Like, it was DJ or nothing, and
Right.
he didn't have to play well to hold on to his job, clearly. And I feel like
Yeah.
it's I mean, I'm feeling it as a Notre Dame fan. Like, we are really leaning on Tyler Buckner being the man this year.
Sure.
You know what I'm saying? And if
Sure.
he's not, then it's going to be a problem. For Clemson, like, it has to feel so good having that other option. Even if Cade Klubnik isn't fully ready as a true freshman, you feel like with the talent, like, he's not going to be horrible as a true freshman. Like, and there's enough talent around him. You know, you have Will Shipley at running back. It's really nice to have a guy like that as your running back. And
Right.
unproven receivers, but still talent. Like, we have to see, but there is talent there, better than anybody else in the ACC. Very unproven. But my point is, there's pieces there. Cade Klubnik he's at least a serviceable option, I believe, as a true freshman. So to me, once we get around to November, when Clemson has to go to South Bend to play Notre Dame, like, I expect them to have solid quarterback play in that game.
Yeah.
No matter who it is, I feel like either DJ has stepped up a bit, or they've replaced him with a really talented player. And that's one key difference, obviously. I mean, I feel like I'm speaking like, just, this is all super Captain Obvious stuff here, but like, it does make a big difference. Like, it really does make a difference.
Oh yeah.
I mean, a year ago, Clemson went 9-3, and I feel like 10-2 feels almost like a floor to me. Not quite. Like, there's
Right.
It could get worse, but realistically, Clemson is going anywhere from 10-2 to 12-0. It might be just as likely to be 10-2 as higher. I don't know. Why don't we go through the schedule a little bit, because you mentioned some of the playmakers they lost on defense.
Right.
Lost the two top corners in the ACC. At least the all ACC team says so.
Yep.
Which isn't really an issue until about September 24th. So they start at Georgia Tech, Furman, Louisiana Tech, then they go to Wake Forest.
To Wake Forest. That's a huge one. Huge game.
But it just keeps going then. You have at Wake Forest, then you have NC State, then you have at Boston College, then you have at Florida State. I don't know how you feel about them. We'll talk about them later. And then Syracuse, who is, they're constantly a thorn in their side. Then a bye week, and then they go to Notre Dame, Louisville, Miami, and then finish with South Carolina. Like, there's not a whole lot of there's really no easy games if you assume that Syracuse and Louisville are not terrible this year, which Syracuse and Louisville might be terrible this year, but if you consider that Syracuse is always tough against Clemson, none of those games might be easy for them. Like, they're going to have to put up points. They're going to have to stop some good quarterbacks. There's some good quarterbacks on that list.
For sure. They have you mentioned that stretch right in there where they go to Wake Forest, home against NC State, and then to Boston College. For me, I just kind of leave Florida State out of that. Florida State, like, they're not there yet. It's cute that we kind of still think of them as cool, but they're not. They're not going to be very good this year. Again, shocker. But the quarterbacks they play there in that little stretch where they go up against, like, to Wake Forest is tough. Sam Hartman is a dude. That offense will be humming. Devin Leary is back at NC State. He beat Clemson last year. Phil Dracovic back at Boston College. I mean, he's a legit NFL candidate there. He has a big arm. Those are some tough quarterbacks. And then you get you get a couple of off weeks with Syracuse. You get a bye, Florida State. Then you go to Notre Dame, and then you get Miami at home. Again, good. I mean, we think that those will be pretty good quarterbacks.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it is tough. It's a tough schedule. Clemson's more talented than most of these teams and is going to win most of these games. But, like, it's not a layup. This is no easy schedule that they're given. They may not have the top end teams that they're going to be playing, but there's a lot of depth in here of really quality opponents. And I think, like I said, I think they dropped 2 of those games.
Sure. Just to be different, and I'm right on the fence here. Maybe you may have been able to tell just from what I've said. I'm gonna go with the over. Okay. This is not one of those that I would have as a lock by any means. Like, and part of the reason I go with the over is because I'm not just penciling in a loss to Notre Dame. Like, I feel like Clemson is the class of the ACC. There's no ACC team at this point that I would pick to beat them necessarily, although I think there's several that have a chance.
Right.
And I think the Notre Dame game is probably a coin flip. So
right.
I'll go with the over. It feels like no matter what I pick here, I'll be wrong. so I'll go with the over. So maybe some more, just really quick, big picture. I know this is not a big picture pod, like we're talking about the 2022 season.
Sure.
But right now, just looking at recruiting going forward, because that's been the big talking point for Clemson this offseason.
Okay.
And we know that probably the weakness of their roster over the years has been the offensive line. They won 2 national titles basically in spite of their offensive lines.
Right.
And I promise this is not just a gloating session as a Notre Dame fan. This is more. I'm trying to look at this from the Clemson point of view. But right now, Notre Dame has 2 offensive line commits from North Carolina, pretty close to Clemson. One of them especially. Both of whom had Clemson offers. And right now they're battling for a third. Monroe Freeling, one of the best left tackles in the country. The presumed favorites are Notre Dame and Clemson. And it feels like Notre Dame is kind of just going to the Carolinas right now and taking their lunch money when it comes to offensive linemen. And it feels like if you're Clemson, like this is not a position you can afford to be losing a lot of recruiting battles. I don't know. Like, how concerned are you? Because this is where Clemson's weakness has already like, this is already their weak spot. Is there a chance that their weak spot just keeps getting weaker? And do you think that's a sign that maybe long term there's some legit cracks in the foundation? And I say this as someone who just took the over on 10.5 wins.
Right. It's really hard to say. I mean, they haven't been able to run the ball for years now. Yeah. Like that's a thing where they literally have good backs too. It's not like they have bad running backs. They have really good running backs and cannot run the football. So, I mean, yeah, but like, I mean, they win titles. Like they won titles that way, True. So like, it's hard to say that like that way just doesn't work, just because like Alabama and Georgia do it, doesn't mean that you have to do it. Like Ohio State has really good line play and like got beat by Michigan. Like whatever. I hate to go too much into it because I think Clemson's going to win most of these games. And like, I'm very like, I'm not confident that they're going, I picked the under right on 10.5, not confident that they're going to go under. Like, I just don't have a really good feel for them yet because like, we don't know. Sure. So yeah, no, I mean, I don't hate that at all. And I think it's a valid point to when you say that Notre Dame's kind of coming down there and taking some of these 4-stars, like offensive line prospects from the Carolinas, but like Clemson hasn't really been really since Jackson Carman, like that 5-star that they had, like who have they really had that's like a notable guy that's like, okay, that's an NFL guy. Like the moment he walks on, that's an NFL dude. And it feels like as far as national powers go, they don't have, that's not really where they put their like they don't put a whole lot of effort into it, it seems. Or
so it would almost be more concerning if this was actually a position that they were historically good at.
Right. Like, so exactly. Like, so like their defensive line, they have Brian Brzee and Miles Murphy. They're back, right?
Yeah.
Like those are 2 really good defensive ends. Like they're going to be able to get after some of these good quarterbacks that we're talking about in the ACC. And like, that's going to win them games. And so you like, but Clemson's already like Clemson in their successful years, they've had a really good defensive line play. You think back to like when they beat Alabama those 2 times, like those guys got after the pass rusher, Yeah. And like, I think these guys will too. So, in that, like they're still doing it the way they've always done it. I think maybe a little bit more concerning than the lack of offensive line play is the departure of Venables, like kind of the mastermind that he all was. And I know we have to keep like we can't get into a whole nother like state of the program. We could just do this like almost every week with Clemson, but because it's they're national power, but like we don't know what to do with them. So. Like we have disagreement here, right? You're over, I'm under. Neither one of us are like confident though.
Yeah, exactly. Like I feel like last year, I've re-listened to a few of our episodes from a year ago, and we mentioned a few that we both felt like really good about.
Yeah,
we'll tell you if you should actually go bet on any of these, and this is not one of them. Like, do not bet on this Clemson win total. Just my personal advice.
Okay.